Okay, so thank you for that kind introduction. You were a little bit wrong about where I come from, but that's okay. I'll forgive you. I'll explain as I go. All right, so I'm going to cut a little bit of time. I wanted to say thank you to a lot of people, but I'm just going to say thank you to everybody, to all the organizers, and for you guys for coming today. And we'll just get on with the presentation. I hope. Oh, thank you. Perfect, thank you. Sorry, the clicker's not working. Maybe if I just do it with this. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you about a social media series that we developed at the Champalimaud Foundation, where I work for the communication events and outreach team. We did call ourselves the CEOs because why not? We don't get enough credit for what we do, so we might as well give ourselves a nice name. I'm going to start. I chose this project to look at because I wanted to show you something that is quite a simple idea that we managed to really squeeze everything we could out of. I think that's the whole point of what we're talking about with engagement is we want to have a great project, but we also want to put it out there in the best way that we possibly can. A combination of the two things is the best way to do it. A very brief intro to where I come from first. Hopefully will play. So this is the Champalimaud Foundation in Portugal, in Lisbon. It sits on the banks of the River Tejo, home to 1,500 specialists in neuroscience, healthcare professionals working on cancer, cancer treatment, cancer research, basic science, physiology. But I'm here to talk about a specific social media project called What Am I Looking At? Now, I'm going to ask for a little bit of audience participation, so don't worry if you get this wrong, but I am going to ask you what you're looking at. I'm going to give you some choices. So if you followed us on Instagram, you'd see this exactly the way you're seeing it today, with an image and 4 choices. So I'm going to ask you to put your hands up if you think that this image represents CRH neurons in the lateral hypothalamus. Okay. A multicolor paint splatter on black canvas. Well, that's wrong. I'm going to a bone marrow model of multiple myeloma, a couple of people, or reprogrammed neural stem cells. I think number 4 got the most. Okay, well, before I give you the answer, because this is how it worked, we put the image on social media, and then about 20 minutes later, we gave them the answer. I'm just going to reveal very quickly, just working backwards, the final stats. We got about 150,000 people to look at this. Now, the reason I'm not going to focus on that is because that was a really great number for us. That was our most successful ever video series. It may not be for you. That might be a very average number, or it may be a number that you are not aspiring to at your institution. But the point is it was very good for us, which is why I'm here to talk to you about it today. We also got a lot of comments online. I just chose a few from LinkedIn to show you, just to kind of prove that people were really engaged with this. They were answering the questions. They were asking questions to each other. I particularly like this last one because the person who guessed that it was a cancer cell invading actually tagged in our team's coordinator to ask if she was right, which I thought was kind of cute and nice also. So what made this series engaging? We're going to have to go back to the beginning just for a second. I'm going to start at the beginning of the process here. We've always had kind of ongoing series on social media. Previously written interviews where we would interview members of staff about their hobbies, music, their lives, whatever, a little peek behind the curtain. We also did videos. We found that the written articles, people don't read written articles anymore, unfortunately. The videos were great, but they take forever to make. People demand really high standards of visuals and audio and subtitles. Also, everything has to be bilingual. We experimented with audio, using audiograms on social media, which we found worked really well. It has that interactivity of a video. It makes you feel closer to the person you're listening to, but doesn't have quite so many technical drawbacks as making a video. So I was tasked with coming up with the idea for the next series, and a little bit of luck meant that at the same time we were making our usual annual report, and we had all of these images on a table, and the question just came to me kind of fully formed, which is, these are beautiful, but what am I looking at? You know, I didn't understand them immediately, and that was the kind of whole idea that we came up with. This is kind of the most important slide, because I think for me this is where things kind of go wrong in SciComm. So we could have done this. We could have put the image on Facebook, on Instagram, with a description of what it was. But we wanted to do something a little bit more interesting, a little bit more engaging, that would get people interacting with what we were doing. We felt that this material would be very accessible in an audio format, even though it's a visual project, because you could see the image and then hear somebody describe it to you at the same time and absorb both parts of that information. Here's my first tip, actually. You can make your own lives a lot easier by making your collaborators' lives a bit easier. Anyone who's worked with doctors and scientists will know that this is the case. What do I mean by that? The first thing I did was send an email to the people who created the images we wanted to use. And in this email, I gave them an example of what we were going to do with their image, a pilot episode with audio that we'd already made. I asked them to give us 2 paragraphs only to describe their image. The 2 paragraphs they gave were a little bit too technical, so we simplified them, but we used them as the basis of the script for our audio. And here's tip number 2. To finish before you start. I've been involved in a lot of projects where you put out episode 1 and then you start working on episode 2, and you're constantly putting out fires. I was determined with this one to have it pretty much finished before we even began. This had the other advantage that I wasn't quite expecting. You can keep the same tone then across the whole series. Something that I've noticed before is you might realize something on episode 4 that you wish you'd done from the beginning, right? Whereas if you have everything done from the beginning, you avoid that issue. This, to help, was my magnum opus, a simple spreadsheet that was the meeting point for the whole team. Everybody knew what they were doing, what their deadlines were. We could identify any bottlenecks, so I would strongly advise you to be organized in your process. Tip 3 is this idea of content without clicking. So this was our first project that we did where everything was available on a single screen. So I mean, if you're on Instagram or you're on Facebook, you don't have to click away to an external site. Now, we knew this would get us extra engagement, but I don't think we knew how important this would be. The social media platforms heavily prefer this kind of content. We noticed it straight away. Everybody was seeing this project in a way that similar things we'd done before that wasn't happened for. An example of this is on our YouTube page. One of our editions was on the front page for a few hours. We saw a huge spike in numbers due to this. We had some tweaks for the different formats. So for example, Instagram is the only format that allowed for the polls. We didn't realize how successful the polls were actually going to be. Instagram was by far our most successful area for this. The ability to interact and to answer the question was kind of fundamental to the whole idea. Then we had on Facebook, which is more of our casual scrollers. Twitter's a little bit more techie, so you have to change the tone a little bit for who your audience is. At this point, I think I should reveal the answer to the question at the beginning, maybe let you see how this works a little bit better. I think this should autoplay, I hope.
You could be forgiven for thinking this is a Jackson Pollock rendition of the Northern Lights. Actually, what you're looking at are bone marrow cells from a patient with multiple myeloma, a type of blood cancer. Bone marrow is the soft tissue inside our bones where blood cells are made. And here's a twist. These cells were grown outside the patient's body. A sample was taken from the patient's bone marrow and grown.
All right, so Hedi goes on to continue for about 90 seconds on this. He explains where the images come from and what they're used for, but I'll just play you the first part so we can reveal the answer was option 3, the bone marrow models. I don't think many people got it right, so give yourself a pat on the back if you did. If you do want to listen to the full episodes, I left some literature outside, some postcards with QR codes that you can scan to listen to the full playlist. There's also a QR code that will come up at the end of my presentation. So what are our next steps? We'd like to develop this content that we already have, and here's where I'd like to extend the invitation to you guys. we would really love to have this available in different languages, for example. So the editions we already have, we could easily add into other languages if you'd like to get involved. The next step from that would be to get other institutes involved in this. If the places where you work provide or create excellent images, we'd love to have you on board for future series. We intend to continue for future series, either with this or some kind of similar format. We also have plans to turn What Am I Looking At into an outreach activity. In fact, we took it to the European Research Night a few weeks ago, where we learned the kids enjoy drawing zebrafish and fruit flies, but the adults are more interested in the competitive aspect of the quiz. But for full disclosure, we did make a few mistakes with this live version. We didn't realize that just having the images in a room wouldn't give the full effect that people would walk in the middle of the recordings. It lost some of the interactivity. So we intend to try to find some way to keep that more central. We want to bring in the creators to speak to people as they, so they can have maybe a Q&A at the end of looking at the images. And we need to adjust the difficulty because the kids really couldn't get it. That was probably our biggest mistake, because we didn't quite realize this. I'm being told I only have 1 minute, so I'm going to wrap up a little bit. My final tip was to have a wonderful team, and I did plan to introduce you to everybody. So I'll just get the names up very quickly and show you how everybody was involved in this project. This is my team back in Lisbon. I will say thank you to them. They're watching on the live stream. And just finish up by saying that I wanted absolutely nothing to do with this photograph. But I did jump the highest, which makes me feel, better. All right, thank you, everybody. Cheers.